Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, and this is part 2 of my conversation with Mr. Terry Singh. Terry is a former ad man who now is the vision behind his own fashion brand, a menswear label in his name, Terry Singh NYC. His aim is to translate the practicality and elegance of the traditional Indian dhoti for a Western consumer. With multiple shows appearing at New York Fashion Week and features at this year's New York Men's Day, he created a buzz on the pages of the New York Times, Vogue, and WWD magazines, to name a few. When asked about his aesthetic, he shares, "I used to be inhibited about what I wore. I kept my head down because I felt people were staring. Then I realized I don't know what's in people's minds, and I started to dress for myself. A question I always ask people is, if today were your last day on earth, what would you wear? Dress like that." And with that, we move back into our conversation where Terry picks up where he left off, translating his experience in the mountains of India to New York City streets.
Dhotis, I came back to New York and I started wearing them.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And of course, the dhotis I was wearing, they were poor man dhotis. They were like a black one, which means when you're like somebody died or you make a pact to make a like Lent.
Okay.
You know, like you on Lent you do for 30 days or whatever. I don't remember.
Yeah.
1 year, and then or you wear white in certain cultures.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what the black one signifies.
Okay.
And then there's the
Original.
orange one, which is like the whole like the priests wear and so forth.
Sure.
And then there's the white one, and so I go to the temple store and I buy fabric. That's what I do.
Sure.
And so because it was cheap.
Yeah.
When I say cheap, I'm talking like, 65 cents a yard.
Oh,
or a
wow.
meter, right? It's so thin and cheap. I have them.
Yeah.
And I still wear them around the house because, they still work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would go out in New York and I'm still myself. I'm still like this businessy guy going, I'm going to Raoul's and I'm going to Blue Ribbon, going all these like really nice places, but I normally go to, but I'm not going with different clothes. Yeah. And I sort of envision like people will part, or even in the train, people will part a certain way.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I ended up going to Etsy and eBay, and I started looking at fabrics.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to change, but I just maybe have to change the garment.
Ah, okay. The styling of it.
Yeah, so I hired designers that I know, like we know people in New York, designers, seamstresses, and so forth. Yes. And everybody came up with a skirt. Okay. Which is like how a woman's skirt is made. Right. And I'm like, what? This is not what I'm experiencing.
Sure.
Like, why am I going to do that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So then I was like, I have to go back to India, but I was already here. So I started looking up Indian designers, and I'm talking like the wedding designers that their clothes cost $20,000-$30,000. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to buy one and I'll just copy it here because we can't do it here. We can make it here, but we can't do the design that they have there, like how to make that work. And I was calling Delhi, I was calling Mumbai. The guy's name was Tarun Tayali. I'm butchering his name, but his work was amazing. But his staff just would not return my calls, and I would get them on the phone, and they're like, "We'll call you back, and we'll come back with shipping costs or whatever." Sure. And I get it. You're in New York. They don't want to take the order. It's just one order, and they have to deal with the shipping and the packing and all of that. Yeah. Come buy our stuff or don't buy our stuff. Buy it when you're here. Yeah. So I started buying the fabrics, and I bought a sewing machine, bought a commercial sewing machine, because I'm always a professional in business, so I always buy commercial things like that. I found amazing fabrics on Etsy. I went to the fashion district in New York, but it was a mess. It really was. It was just like you have to go through to look what you want, and I had no idea. And so I figured, look, the easiest way to do it is because of our lifestyle here, just buy the best. If you buy the best, you don't, the most expensive, you're in a different category of fabrics that's going to work and so forth. So I found what are called jobbers. Okay. These are people who get leftover pieces from the mill or from the factory. And especially in Italy where they do the stitching, there's always a little bit of leftover, and the jobbers have relationship with the factories and the mills, and they'll get about 9 meters, 5 meters, not a lot of fabric. But it was enough for me to start buying and start making them.
Sure.
And so I bought them. And then the first seamstress did something really good. She put a waistband on it, like you make a man's suit. And so I took that and I was like, all right, there's structure in here. And then I started learning how to do the pleats. And I bought a commercial iron and I learned how to pin. I used to watch a lot of YouTube videos and I learned, they say pin, 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 pin. That's what I would do. One pleat, I would hold it and I would pin it with 6 or 7 pins. Yeah. And then I would do the next one and I'll measure and I'll pin. And then I'll iron and then I'll pin. And then I'll tell you, to not exaggerate, I would, to do a wrap, I would end up using 7 to 8 meters.
Wow.
And I would have, because it has to go around my waist, right? Which is like 34 to 36 inches. And then it needs to wrap around on top of that. Yeah. And my pleats are 5 inches under.
Right. Okay.
Because I don't want it to be compressed like a woman's, like an accordion.
Yeah, you want them to lay flat in a
well, also the Indian dhoti, when you look at them, they when we did do them in India when I was there, they would lay it one on top of the other and then they would tie it in the front. So I'm accustomed to it being a very masculine.
Sure, a weighty kind of
That's
garment.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, just the front part of it, right? And I would... for me, the pleating was important. And then I just started making them. I was better by me making them in India. And the way I make the dhotis is the way they do them in North India, which is like it goes through your legs. Because I want that pleating layered in the front. But in South India, it's called a lungi and it's only a wrap. Like a sarong. Okay. But I put the two together. Okay. So because I wanted the pleating of the North, but I didn't want the wrap down my legs because how are you going to go to the bathroom? Yeah. Like, that's a nightmare. Yeah. And I like the openness of South India. Sure. So I put the two ideas together that worked for me. Okay. And with the waistband that we make here a suit. And I didn't end up, it worked. Okay. It just worked. It was easy to come on, off. And I used just iron hooks. Okay. There's a guy from West Africa, and he was a tailor at the Bloomingdale's and so, and he's like, oh, you don't need to worry about dude. You just put the hooks in reverse, and tension will hold it. Sure. And I was like, no way. Yeah. Now we do buttons and buttonholes, but back then, and I still do them like that because they work. It's just easy to. Yeah. It's easy to move an eye over, or add 2 on, and not a big deal, right? Yeah. And so that was the birth of it, and I would. Because of the nice fabrics, and it was a new look, and I didn't know this, but a beard started growing. Oh, okay. And I didn't care, and also my hair started growing long, and also I didn't care. Like, why? It became not about fitting in anymore or how I look. Sure. It was more about experiencing life. Okay. And I didn't know something was happening because when I would walk down from my neighborhood here of Columbus Circle area and get down to Soho. Yeah. As soon as you hit Soho, people would start taking your photographs. And I didn't, they would stop you, but sometimes I didn't know that. One day I ran out of money, so I took a part-time job, 20 hours a week at the Bloomingdale's. Okay. And I would wear them at Bloomingdale's and, they wouldn't say anything. Oh, okay. They didn't approve of color, but I did wear it anyway. Sure. And, interesting. And I remember the sales director would come down and she would say, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Because then you're going into areas that you don't even know what's going on. Yeah. Right? And I'm a professional, so it's not like you're trying to be like out there and so forth. Right. But the beautiful thing about being in a creative environment like Soho, which fosters like the cool, it was like the cool thing in the area to do, is that you felt very supportive down there. And so I felt like I was at home. I was like, oh my God, like that's it. People like, you look at me, I think, what are you doing? But my neighborhood here, I had created, I've been here since 1979. I know everybody in my neighborhood. I have children. I had 3 children. I raised in this building. These are my children. Yeah. Photos of my children. And then I became aware of like the looks, and I would put my head down as I would walk down the street. And in those days when I first started, I was actually tying the dhoti with a knot and rolling it up.
Okay.
This is before the construction when I started, because what I was talking about was after I developed that. And by the time I get to the subway,
It was
it would fall off.
Yeah.
So I'd have to wait for the train, because it's usually when I go down the stairs.
Yeah.
And so when I get down to I'll let the train go by and I'll go behind the stairs.
Yeah.
I would roll it up into a ball, because you can't open the 7 meters of fabric.
Yeah.
I'd roll it up into a ball, and when I would get to Bloomingdale's, I'll go to the alterations room downstairs where there were 2 people working there, and they knew me because I worked in men's design, which is suiting.
Yes.
So because I was in the alterations room all the time.
Sure.
And then I would go, and there was a guy named Jose, then he would come help me, and we would just use pins and pin it up. And it looked terrible.
Oh no.
Because you're pinning just to hold it in. And there was, I remember sometimes we couldn't get it right, because it was a black I was wearing, and it would be a long piece left over, and I would just take it and throw it over like a shawl. A shawl like that. Yeah. And it would be now, oh, look at this, and there's no judgment in that area. So nobody said anything. Sure. So all of a sudden I became, in my mind, because of the people around there and like doing that, kind of fabulous. Because you can wear that now and go on. So I went from like a normal everyday person to a person that just wears whatever they want and do whatever they want, really, because we couldn't hold it together.
Sure.
And that's the premise of how I started making these. Okay. And I started making more and more and more. And then one day this couple, Tom and Henri, 2 good friends of mine, Tom Blackie and his partner Henri was going to a wedding. And my partner at the time had a hat business. She was going to Parsons, and I would deliver hats for her to their store. And they love what I would wear. And they were a fabulous gay couple. Like they love everybody and everything. Ironically, everybody loves them too. Like they foster
just a loving
family. And it exists all the time.
Yep.
Right now they do. And they're like, we're going to a wedding, can you make us a piece? But it was only like 2 days for the wedding, so I took the Friday off at Bloomingdale's, and I had enough fabric to make one. I couldn't do, and I made one for Tom. And it's this one right here, actually.
Oh wow.
I brought it back to fix he lost some weight. And he said, and I remember him coming, he's Scottish, and he's like, can you make it shorter like a kilt? And I said to him, no,
because it's a dhoti.
I'm like, I don't do kilts. Like if he wants somebody, and I remember he's like, okay, Donatella.
But I mean,
that's what he did. I was like, I'm sorry, like, why would I want it? You can go and
get a coat.
I was like, you can go to Amazon and order one, because we looked at them, like, because we're trying to make this, like, they're all available. Sure. And, and then Henri wanted one with the layers. Yes. And so, or I was doing a bubble version of it too. Like I was just doing a lot of experimentation on it. And he ended up borrowing one of mine. And the issue it looked great on them, but we only had jackets, like regular jackets.
Long jackets.
Yes. And I have a Gucci tuxedo from when I produced the film for the opening night. I wore a tuxedo, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm like, I have a very nice jacket. But when I put it on, the jacket was just long. Yeah. It just didn't work. Sure. And Henri ended up wearing his own, and it just didn't work. But they were a hit at the wedding. Nevertheless, they did look amazing. Yeah. And then I was like, I need to figure this out. And then at Bloomingdale's, one day I was going in the morning, and there's this young guy, he looked like he was 16, coming in, and I know everybody. I'm 55. I'm 55 now. Yeah. This is, I don't know, 8 years ago. And I was like, oh, I'm Jack, I'm new here. And he was working for Ted Baker. And then I said, what do you do? He says, oh, I'm a designer. I just moved to the city from Boston. I said, what do you make? He goes, I make suits and jackets. I said, really? I remember putting my arm around him. And I was like, you're my new friend. You're going to be my best friend. Right. And he goes, look, I can help you. But he goes, I just do the design. I don't really do the stitching. Okay. Like it's a craftsman work. Sure. And so that's what he did. And he's a really good designer. And it turns out he's learned more and more about craftsmanship. And he's an excellent craftsman now. So the combination of the two, he's a superstar. Sure. But it was sheer luck, fate, whatever we want to call it, that I ended up working at Bloomingdale's in a place where fosters creativity and had fabrics, and I learned about suiting and fitting, and that I met somebody who just got out of school, and the combination of all of those things, I developed a look. Serendipitously or not, I don't know. It just happened that way. Yeah. And now we've been doing fashion shows, and a lot of good things are coming out of it.
Sure.
And it's still a long way to go. Wherever it goes, it goes. But the most important thing is what we're doing now is it for some people, it actually is important. They send me messages all the time, like personal message on Instagram. And also sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I remember two young guys went to a Soul Summit party in Fort Greene Park. And then a couple, I don't know, like 20 blocks later, I was going to another party, and these two guys ran over me, these two, like maybe 25-year-old, 23-year-old white guys. And they're like, hey, we saw you there, and we want to thank you for being here. I had no idea what they meant. And then I thought about it, and it's like I'm an older man, and I have a beard, and I'm wearing a skirt, and I'm dancing happy and free in the sun.
Yeah.
And to them, it made they were both gay, and it made it easier to see in the public eye. You can be free and be comfortable.
Sure.
And I felt very fatherly to them because I have 4 children, and I realized like what I was doing had meaning to people, just being me, and that I should pay reverence to it. Like don't.
Sure.
Like it's not about fashion. It's not about looking good. Right?
It's about the experience of being yourself.
Yeah, like that was that's really where like all of that led me to that realization. Those two guys, and so that's the story right up to now.
Okay.
I mean, there's more, but that's like
course.
that. You asked,
of course.
You asked the foundation of the Doti to here. And that's where.
Exactly. Okay, so I typically ask the question, why the where? So how did you come to be living, working, and playing where you currently are? And you kind of already answered that, but tell us a little bit more about your New York.
My New York, I mean my experience here.
Yeah. So you had this opportunity potentially to stay in India and not come back. And so you really kind of mentioned how you decided to come back and why you decided to come back. Let's go a little bit deeper into, the why of coming back to this place, to this particular neighborhood, and making that your space.
Are you familiar with the story of Esther in the Bible?
I'm not.
Yep. So Esther, the king, Esther was Jewish and she married the king. Let's go to my church days now. Esther, the king's priest says like the Jews are evil and we have to kill them. We have to get rid of them. The only way to get rid of them, in those days, you kill them. It's not like you have to leave our thing. And as it turns out, to speak to the king to plead their case, because this is a priest that's doing it, the villagers live outside of the castle.
Sure.
And so to have access to the king, you have to have somebody inside. But it just turns out Esther married the king. So Esther is Jewish, and Esther doesn't want to go against the king's wishes and so forth. But the power of being inside the castle is access to power, really. So we're redundant. Access to power is where you can get things done, right? And so similarly, I look at New York as the castle.
Yeah, got it.
Right, like there, you can be in the supermarket and like or Whole Foods, and there's 16 people who are like the most influential in their business or craft or whatever, or anywhere you go. And if you go to like certain areas or certain restaurants, absolutely,
sure,
right. I went to Indochine on Lafayette the other night, and around 8:00, and I looked at the crowd that's coming in, and they were all New York because it was Sunday at 8:00. It's not a tourist thing; it was empty right before that, and you could see all the players coming in, like the classic. The same thing with Blue Ribbon or Gramercy Tavern or Raoul's. Like these are iconic places where people who live here and can afford their life to go and eat there, because you're going to have dinner is going to be $300, $400. It's going to add up.
Right.
And when that's the norm, these people have access to income. They have access to capital. And so if you want to be in that flow, the city offers that.
Right.
And that's just showing up.
Yeah.
But if you just call enough people, it will happen.
Right. So it's the magic of New York and the network that just
I can accomplish more here than I can from a mountaintop in India.
Of course.
And if you're here, then why are you really here? I mean, are we really here to contemplate the processes of the universe, or to spend my days in prayer and meditation. If B, when I was born, what was I doing before? Like, to go back to where I was doesn't make the logic doesn't jive with me. So I'm like, then I must be here for a reason. Whatever that reason is, I don't know. But if B, I make that choice on what I do with it, and my choice is not to spend my time praying or looking at where I came from, rather than I'm here.
Got it.
Because no matter what I do, I'm going to end up back there.
Got it.
So I kind of look at it like this is my vacation.
Oh, okay. All
I'm
right.
on vacation.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the ass. I gotta pay rent to be here. I gotta eat. I want to go here.
Right.
I want to see the area. I want a boat ride.
Yeah.
You know, all the things. I want to have drinks at that. I want to go to the Italian restaurant over there. You know.
But that's an interesting way to put it, as the vacation, because the real work is in a different self.
Yeah, and it's not easy. By no means in the term vacation like you're resting, because vacations are not resting.
Sure.
When you get on vacation,
you have an agenda, you have things to do, you have to coordinate. Yeah.
Well, you're dying to get back. Like, I'm going to rest when I get back. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I like that analogy. Yeah. That's an interesting segue into what I call my mindset hack. Something that you practice, something that you know of. What is your way of hacking into your mind?
I don't believe in mind. It comes up in my language. It comes up in language all the time. I've been working at it, because it would mean I would have to separate who I am in this present moment and into something else is saying it.
Okay.
And through my experience doesn't tell me there's another person in my head saying, say this, Terry, do this, Terry, do that. Only a thought can do that, right? And so there's a thought that says this and a thought that says that, but only thought that matters and counts is the one right now.
Okay.
So if I'm engaged in this thought right now, there's no way my head is thinking in the background. If I'm not listening to you, I'm going to go back there. Right. Okay. So you can be saying, and I'm talking, I'm listening. Then I would have to pause and not listen to you and go, so let me think back in my memory, things that are recorded, and see where my memory tells me. Now I just missed out on the present. So I'd rather people don't even ask me things.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, why? I'm going to have to go back now. I'm like, we're missing out on you. We could be kissing.
Sure.
As simple as that.
That is simple. That's a first for the podcast. And it's an interesting perspective on, why just, be, and it will always just be, right?
And it's all perspectives. Yeah. Well said. They're all perspectives. None of them are real and none of them are tangible, and they change. Yeah. Well, speaking of words, I want to ask you my Glocal speak question. So this is where you share a word, a phrase, or a saying that is a significant or impactful part of your Glocal experience. My local experience? So where you've been local. So whether it's in New York, whether it's been your time in India, like different kinds of sayings that ring, that are sentiment as part of your Glocal speak. My go-to one is Shakespeare. Okay. Maybe it's not. It is Shakespeare. If all the world's a stage, right? And we tend to look at in a spectrum of that. Everybody's a player, right? Everybody's an actor and so forth. Yeah. And so mine is, if all the world's a stage, and own that bitch. Like, just be the biggest queen there is. Like, be A1 dance player number one. Like the first name on the chart. Sure. And that's how I dress for it in the morning. I get up. I put on. That's why I make these. Another reason why I make them. Yeah. It's like, I'm gonna be fabulous today. Like, that's what I meant. Like, it kept developing and developing. Sure. So, because when I have to walk up the stairs, I have to hold these things like a queen does, like so forth, right? Sure. And you really feel like grand, and people look at you and they take your photographs. Yeah. And people are in awe, and some people don't. Like, they're like, "What the hell?" But they don't understand it. Yeah. A good amount of people ask me if it's religious, and I'm like, "I'm wearing flowers." Nevertheless, it creates interaction, and it creates more of a stage. Right. So it's a state. I mean, it's really speaking. You're speaking in your garments. Yes. Yeah, as you present yourself as a whole being. It allows for that. It allows for openness. It allows for exposure. It allows for interaction and communication. And it allows for identity of, like, I am this. However I am. Right. So I think, speaking about identity and how you've created this brand, which I think is now
I don't want to say more relevant than anything else before, but the idea of, the gender pronouns and like the gender fluidity and things like that. How are you, or do you think that your label is being recognized or viewed or understood in any kind of different context than it may have been maybe 5 years ago?
I don't fall into any of those understandings of
Okay.
of what may be or perceptions or any of
Sure.
those kind of things.
Sure.
It also would digress from me, like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I'm not gonna know anyway or care.
Yeah.
I did a podcast recently. I don't even listen to it. I'm like, I
Okay.
don't want to know. I already said what I said.
Okay.
Yeah, like how
Okay.
do I sound or perception? So my partner listened to it,
Okay.
and she said, "Oh, there will be things that were like Black Panther coming up and like that kind of."
Oh, okay.
But the talk led to that about rebelliousness and
Sure.
the nature of how we are, and
Yeah.
we have to come together, and like the Black Panthers came together back.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I don't care. I mean, like, why am I going to listen to that? Then it'll influence the next way I think or whatever we do. What we put into our mind now is where our processes are going to pull information from.
Yeah.
Right. And so all the things that happened in the past, let's say that were uncomfortable, are there, right? They're there. But if we load up enough new information in front of it, it's not going to go all the way back to 1966 and pull from it. It's going to pull from maybe 1985 or 1995 or 2005.
Sure.
Right? There's a long list to go through. Whichever one's are the strongest one it's going to do.
Yeah.
And I choose to build on strong new neural patterns.
Okay.
Right, and reinforce those
Yeah.
by listening to them over and over. And like, I like this, and which is great because I create and I make things. I'm forced to stitch slowly. I'm forced to go and pin something and think about it twice. And when I make something, I'll pin it up and I'll look at it for a couple of days, and then after it's done, I'll change it a couple times if it works for me.
Yeah.
And I'll look at it in no light, little light, morning light, and it's like, oh, this wouldn't be good. That doesn't work for me in that light. And then when it's all said and done, I'll wear it. And then when I wear it, if like one side pleats are not in the right direction, because the way I do pleats is that the pleats should wrap around your body in two directions
Okay.
to shape the contour of you,
Sure.
as opposed to only going in one direction,
yes,
and then they
yes.
stick out like that, like a
Right,
fan. And I'm like, who does that?
Yeah.
And so I do them half and half.
Yeah.
Half goes one way, half the other.
Yeah.
And there's a split in the middle. And what's
Sure.
nice about the split in the middle is you can part it when you go to the bathroom. You don't have
Sure.
to take anything off.
Sure.
There's so much development in this. You
Yeah.
wouldn't even
I mean,
believe
they're
it.
beautiful garments. Yeah.
Not digressing slightly. So yeah, I don't really care. It's
Okay.
not, the other thing, it goes back to those bells and bells.
Yeah.
People who are curious or say something or mean something, they say it and then they move on themselves to the next complaint
Sure.
or celebration, whatever.
Got it. Understood. So you talked about the creative side of it, but there's a business side that is always involved with having a label and getting into the fashion industry. So I'm curious about how you are able to and how you maybe leveraged your advertising experience to actually create a brand that is making money and being in shops and in all of the sales and that business side of it.
We're currently at that place now of looking at that, and the market is ready.
Yes.
Because somebody just, my merchandising person just came back, sent me a photo. She was at Saks today, and Off-White has a skirt in the window. How beautiful, with pants. I find that, if I may digress a little bit, I was with my little girl the other day, and Tom Brown was in the window at Neiman Marcus. And mind you, they're putting two skirts, one at Saks and one at the window. And I met with Saks. Saks is interested. And I said, and she goes, I don't like it. Yours is better. I'm like, okay, you're being opinionated. You're 8 years old. I'm like, but I looked at her and said, why are they wearing a skirt and a pants?
Right.
It's like that story of like, you can't have your foot in the river, on the land, and on land at the same time.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere. Like you have to you're going to be on land or one. So I think there's something just not solidified. They're testing and seeing pleasing what men and perceptions are, and so that's just not me. I shouldn't, not to get into that, but that's what I'm seeing. Your questions about the business. So I find that when in advertising, I did really well in publishing. So I had many clients and there was a lot of income coming in and earnings. And I find that you buy what you want. You want to produce a film, you do it. You need money, here's funding, you do those things.
Yeah.
And I find that you're doing that with people. And I always thought of, why can't we just do it without the money? Like, why do we have to do it with the always money?
Yeah.
Well, I understand rent's got to get paid. You're behind this and those kind of things. But on a whole, that means you can't get anything done unless you have money. And so I started with the premise because I am inherently doing something for the embetterment and of the nature of changing perceptions and it shouldn't be because I put money behind it. And so if I sell 10 a year, I am happy. I don't have to be in any store or any of those kind of things. I never started and envisioned that I have to be in a store and like that. It just so happens other people are doing that, and I celebrate them.
Got it.
Because the more people that change their perceptions, they elevate themselves, right? And that's what we really want. Is like the point I'm alluding to is like once we change our thinking about one thing, then we're like, well, what else is not true?
Right.
I'm not identified by this this object anymore. Then what else I'm not identified in? And that's what this does for me. Right? It's like I use this analogy of like, I remember when you first ride a bicycle and you start going, you're like, oh my God, like I can go anywhere. You start thinking you could ride all the way to Asia if the land connected.
Right.
And the reality is you can. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can. If you just want to go, you can keep going on. And so you're like, what else can I ride? I can drive a car next, like whatever it might be.
Yeah. It's just the bound is the bound of where your imagination can take you ultimately. Yeah.
That's what this does. It just changes the perception of like, I'm not identified as a man wearing pants. That doesn't make me a man anymore. Well, shit, I have 4 children, and grandchildren.
Right.
And they're badass on their own.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about what anybody thinks or say or anything like that. That makes you an amateur.
Okay.
Right? Like your ignorance is yours and you're still good with me. Sure. It just means that you haven't evolved. You're not growing. You're not you can't see beyond what you only limit you. And the universe loves you just as much. Right? But you can be more.
Right. You can be more. So let's talk about the Terry that's not the designer, the one who is in the leisure space. Are you a reader? Are you a watcher? Are you a listener? And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens?
I stopped reading because of what I told you, because I'm putting in more and more other people's ideas into my head. And I need to experientially come up with a solution for myself. Yeah. Like, I need to go through this and I need to figure this out, not like, what would somebody do? Right? Or how would they handle it? They're not their situation. And how would they handle it? They're not even here. And so I'm trying to get away from reading, even to the point I said I bought a book today. But they pile up, and so let them pile up. But that's a habit that we have. And, it's hard to get from. Yeah. The Terry, I do listen every night before I go to bed. Okay. I do. And the reasoning for that is, as we know, that we still absorb information through sounds. Yes. And so this is an elaborate sound system.
I'm looking at it.
And it's constantly playing something spiritual, like a very melodic tone.
Got it.
That provokes tranquility. Sure. And sound is through waves, and it permeates into everything. Yes. So it's constantly filling the energy in the space with that. So right now I'm listening to, somebody had given me a book in India by an author named J. Krishnamurti. And I had tried listening to him before, and I just couldn't get him. He was just so harsh and hard, and and I wanted something airy and light. I wanted to feel like I'm floating and happy, and like the universe is glowing. You're gonna form into the sunlight. And J. Krishnamurti is like, wake the fuck up, like no, we need to figure this out together. Like this is it's only happening where in here. Yeah. It's only happening in here. And it's the oddest thing to listen to before you go to bed, because it doesn't transcend you into like a floaty, airy space. But I find that it provokes me to look inwards at my belief system, how I look at it. And I listen to him almost every night now. I tried listening to other people as of late. There's different people I've listened to, Muji, Ram Dass, Osho a lot. I used to listen to a lot of Osho, and I've learned something about each of them, about where they develop their insight from. And so one of them I would say it's like, it's playful, like it's not real. It's like, why are you taking it so seriously? Or Alan Watts is like, look, it's a dance, like it's a dance. And so when you start looking at and reading or listening to all of these people, you'll realize the same thing that I mentioned earlier, is that everybody had their own method. And you can get caught up into one method, but when you have a multitude of them, you realize, like, well, it started with me because my mom is Muslim, my father is Hindu, and then there's Christianity, and then I started looking into Buddhism because Buddha, Zen, and so then you start realizing they're all pretty much doing the same thing in their own way. Exactly. It worked in that part of the world.
Sure. Right.
And as global citizens, we can just say, like, oh, this is curry, and this is Japanese food, and this is Chinese food, and this is Mexican food, and they're all good. And I like it when I'm there.
Right.
But I don't take the Mexican food and go to Japan and say, oh, it's not good because it's not Mexican.
Right.
It's not spicy.
Sure.
The idea of the Japanese food is the simplicity in it, and the purity, and and the minimalism, like you're getting into that. And that's what you get from like really immersing yourself in all of them. And I think like that's pretty much what I do with all of them. I look at all of them as leisure listening, but not taking any of them to stock. I don't go to them to learn anything. And it's like, I'd rather put that into my space than my partner was, Marika, was listening to she was living in England until recently, very cute. And there's something on Netflix about these violent things that they were doing. And there was this guy, he had to sleep with a pig because the queen's like niece was kidnapped and wanted to do that. And I was so upset. We just started dating too. And I was like, why would you watch something so disturbing and put that into you? And now you're engaged in this disturbingness, which has nothing to do and no benefit, but to engage your time that you have, which is the most valuable thing. And it's like, and she learned fast. She's wonderful. She's a reader. She reads like 5 books a week. She reads like all the time.
Sure. I'm
like, and she likes to read 5 pages of this one and that one. And so it's good to be around her in that way. But I'm keen on what comes into my mind.
Yeah. Got it.
I say that, and I like The Matrix,
So you still watch some movies sometimes?
Yeah, I do. What I do is that when I have to work on the computer, which I can't stand. I can't. It kills me. So what I do is I have a laptop, and then I have a desktop, and on the laptop I'll play something that I know.
Okay. So you don't have to engage.
I don't have to engage, and I can just listen, because it's boring to spend. We only have this sand of time, and it's running out, and then we're going to take 8 hours and put it on a screen. You died that day. You're dead. You add them all up, they don't even matter. All you did was you added up enough so you can have a place to sleep and eat.
Okay.
The system is built that you never really make enough money to say, let's take 5 years off. And let's start over again.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I love that. I love where your energy is. This has been so insightful, and I just really enjoyed the time that you've been able to give to me for this conversation. And so before we sign off for today, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience?
As soon as you go back into a thought about the past or why this happened or that, you just missed out on like the present. Not the present like a gift, like which is what the present is, but you miss out on a time that you're never going to get back again. So don't repeat it over and over again.
Right.
As soon as you repeat it, you've lost.
Yeah.
Like, please don't. And all that is a thought. A thought is going to come up. Let it come. But if you look at it, it's going to come. It eventually, you'll get into the habit of like, oh, please, let me don't think about that now. Let me don't think about that now. Like, put that off for later. Put that off for later. And look, it's work, and I work at it all the time. It's not like the brain shuts down.
Right. Yeah. It's just a practice. And I really like that you said that, because I think that worry and regret are tied in that. And so many people are, suffering from anxiety and all those things just because they are not in that presence.
Even if you are, even you can't help getting anxiety. You can't help it. We have systems that's been developed in us through our past. Our DNA brings us into survival mode. Like every animal are born knowing what to do. Gone wrong. We baby ourselves, right? Because we're a different kind of species. But in our DNA are things too, like the worry and fright, and fight or flight, and we still operate like that. We don't turn it off, and that's okay, because we should turn it off. Well, you can't. And you have to live in a mountain in a cave. And I try that you will eventually, like, is this what it's all about? Isn't there more? Like, what am I doing now? And so it's important to know that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen all the time. But the fact is that you know that it's going to happen. You know you're going through it, and you're just like, okay, where are my mechanisms now?
Yeah.
Let me put in the mechanisms now. I'm going to go through a rough road. I'm going to put it in a 4-wheel drive. Right? It's going to be a storm. I need chain on my tires because of the snow. Right? What do I need? Or you got caught in it, which is even better, which is what usually happens. We don't intentionally put ourselves in situations. Things will happen. Okay, I'm in here now. Let's go. And I ended with one thing. Twice I was in Mexico, and 2 times I got taken out by riptides.
Oh.
And nobody's on the beach. Maybe, it's Mexico, and this wide open, beautiful beach, and you don't know where the riptides are. I got taken out, and I'm going, and I am not the strongest swimmer. And I used to be a strong swimmer. I am a rescue diver, but I've been doing it for years.
Sure.
And everything is practice. If you don't have a practice, you get tired. Probably was drinking the night before. And I remember I'm getting taken out, and I was really far out where the buildings were like getting smaller and smaller. And I said to myself, are you ready to die today? Because you're not going to be able to swim back. And what do you do in this situation? And I remember saying, well, I'm not ready to die today. Like, this doesn't have to kill me. And then it was just a shift in thinking, like, this doesn't have to kill me. What do I have to do? And I went to my rational mind, not to panic. Okay, you don't exhaust yourself. Swim diagonal to the beach, because the riptide just only goes in one direction.
Exactly.
And then just have enough energy to touch the sand. And I remember that if you hold your breath and you go down, your breath is full of air. Your lungs is full of air, and you're a balloon. I remember it from my diving lessons. And I just did all the way back when I got tired to touch the sand. And I remember as soon as I touched the sand, I was still too deep in water because I was going up and down. I was like, I can just die here. I'm fine because I'm so close to you. And then you got on the beach and you forgot all about it. You almost died. Because you had it all along the way. Like, it's like, I wasn't going to die. You forgot, like, oh my God, can't believe I made it. It was none of that. It was like, okay, all right, let's go. Let me go lay down on the beach. I'm not going in the water again. But it wasn't like, hey guys, guess what? There was no celebration. There was none of that. There was no celebration of life or any of those kind of things. It was just like the normal thing, just doing it.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. It's a great story.
Really, it was just freaking like the water takes you out, and everything in life does that. Bills, partners, stress, your mother's and father's problems, whatever. Somebody gets sick, you get pulled out into it, right?
Exactly.
But you can be pulled out, but it's not you.
Right. It's just that moment.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Mr. Terry Singh, for joining us for this episode of the podcast. You've been listening to Glocal Citizens, listeners. You can catch us with new episodes each and every Tuesday at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, or subscribe. Tell a friend. Leave a comment. It helps people find good content online. And until next time, bye for now.